Photos of blood on a canopy, but are there more clues to be found? World-renowned forensic scientist and Court TV analyst Dr. Henry Lee boarded the ship earlier today to find out.
We did conduct different experiment, measurement, study. We did check the cabin, the canopy, and the balcony. We did a couple of experiments. However, I'm not going to share with you the detail of the experiment. That's part of agreement. I did find something, okay, but I cannot tell you what we found. We did find something.
Bree Smith is George's sister. She's here with more on her family search for the answers. Okay, Bree, what did you find?
Well, I think that given the amount of pressure we put on Royal Caribbean recently, they did cooperate with my family more than as usual, and they extended the time that Dr. Lee and his crew, as well as our attorney Brett Rifkin and Jennifer's attorney Jim Walker, spent on the boat. So I think they were pleased with the greater amount of time, and they were able to conduct more experiments than they would have been in the original 2-hour allotted time. They were unfortunately not permitted to throw the mannequin overboard to do those tests, but they were able to get on the overhang and do other tests on that overhang.
All right, well, the important thing was he said he found something. Dr. Lee said he found something. This is not a man who would use those words without a bit of caution. Everyone wants this solved. They want to find out what happened. Are you excited about Dr. Lee's discovery?
Yes, we're very excited about Dr. Lee's discovery, and we can't thank him enough for all of his help, him and also his crew. We're very pleased that he has, decided to help my family.
Do you really think that whatever the discovery is, it's going to help solve this?
We think that it definitely could help solve the mystery, yes.
That's pretty exciting. I want to put a statement up from Royal Caribbean, and let's talk about that mannequin experiment. This is what they had to say. It said, "We've decided to permit attorneys and investigators for the Smith family and Jennifer Hagel Smith to visit the ship with the hope they will honor the concerns about maintaining the confidentiality and the integrity of the FBI's investigation. The company has noted the attorneys and investigators' request to throw objects over the balcony of the Smiths' cabin. Due to the fact the ship is in service with guests on board, the company cannot permit this activity at this time. The company is willing to discuss the activity under different circumstances sometime in the future." I mean, obviously, Dr. Lee wanted to act over the balcony a form that resembled in size and shape and weight that of your brother, but it's my understanding they didn't allow it because there were people already on the ship, clients on the ship, but they will in the future. Do you know when this experiment might take place?
We don't know when, and I think there's actually more to it than the fact that there are people on the boat already. I think that it probably would be a media nightmare for them to see a mannequin falling overboard because it would draw attention to the fact that that's what happened to my brother when he was murdered and thrown overboard. And I think that could also be one of the main reasons why Dr. Lee was not permitted to do that experiment.
Is it fair to say, though, given their response, and I certainly don't know, given their response, though, they seem to be saying, we'll let you do it, but maybe they want to do it where the media can't watch, there aren't people on board ready to sail on this ship. Are you confident they will give you the chance to perform the experiment?
Well, they have said it openly to the media, and we hope to take them up on their word and to do that experiment at a later date.
All right, there is so much that has changed on board, and certainly in the room in question. Dr. Lee was not able to pull up the carpeting and check the padding. I guess we can understand the ship is about to sail. That's pretty time-consuming. But has the room been thoroughly repainted? And by that, I mean not just the walls, but the ceiling, all of the items that Dr. Lee would like to examine, or were there items still in the original state?
I actually don't have that information, Catherine, and I know that we have respected the wishes of the FBI to keep that sort of information confidential.
All right, tell me about your thoughts regarding the release of those photographs of the room, because it really caused quite a consternation. Lenny Davis, who's representing Royal Caribbean, seemed to indicate, and the statement seems to verify that those photos were handed over with complete promise of confidentiality. Did your attorney, did you guys make a mistake in releasing those photographs to the press?
There was no explicit agreement between Royal Caribbean and my family not to release those photos. And Catherine, we were so fed up of hearing the untruths that Royal Caribbean had sealed off that room. And we believe that the photos that we released did not cause a problem forensically. We had enough of hearing constantly that Royal Caribbean, by at least 4 different people, saying that room was sealed, no one was permitted, when we have all sorts of witnesses that saw cleaning staff in that room, and the photographs prove that Royal Caribbean were in that room and did cause disarray to that room. So there was no explicit agreement, and I think that Royal Caribbean is always trying to either blame my brother, who's not here to defend himself, unfortunately, or blame my family. And I think they need to take a good, long, hard look at their actions and maybe think about what they could do to improve. God forbid this ever happen again.
Are you getting access, or is Dr. Lee getting access to FBI or Turkish authorities' materials, at least in reports, if not the individual items they may have seized?
I know that my family has a crime scene report, and I know that the FBI has that same crime scene report, and it has been reported that items collected by the Turkish government were given to the FBI. What those items were, I unfortunately don't know.
Right. What about the night before the early morning hours, before the moment when your brother was taken back to the room or joined by 2 or 3 other individuals, 3, I believe, to the room? What sort of activities have you learned about during the earlier hours, the drinking, the casino? There are reports that he was drinking, he and Jennifer both were drinking absinthe with others, and that's a pretty powerful liquor, even known for sort of hallucinogenic, amnesiac characteristics.
Well, I actually have 2 comments about the absinthe. The first is, the FBI is still investigating, and it's 6.5 months later, and I think it's strange that all of a sudden this absinthe story appears in the press, and I think that's because Royal Caribbean's trying to make it look like an accident again. But like I said, the FBI is still investigating. I honestly think that if the FBI thought this was an accident, they would have closed the book by now. And the second thing, Catherine, is Larry Kay, who is affiliated with the Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines, on an earlier program this evening accused my brother, who's not here to defend himself, of bringing the absinthe on board. Now, as you might know, Catherine, absinthe is a Russian drink, and my brother was partying with 3 Russians that evening, and I think it's abominable for Larry Kay to accuse my brother of bringing a drink on when he's not here to defend himself. Once again, I think my family is just so fed up of all these accusations about my brother when he's the victim, and once again, he's being victimized as well as my family.
Well, just because the drink was involved doesn't mean at all it was an accident, because I think that would be a very powerful drink to be giving someone if you wanted to incapacitate them.
That's very true. That's very true.
Certainly. So have you gotten that verified? Is anyone, say, crew members, bartenders, others, even the 2 Russian men that have been mentioned so many times in conjunction with this story, anybody verified that that was being consumed?
All I know is witnesses' accounts that perhaps they were drinking absinthe. I think that needs to be verified.
Okay, I've got a question that I want to put up an email from Janine, and Janine, I appreciate this. She's from Valencia, California, and she says, I have yet to hear about the supposed large amount of money that George had been quote bragging about. Was it in the safe after he disappeared? My theory is he was forced to open the safe, robbed, and then thrown overboard by the men he met on board. There certainly were many things reported in the story that may not be true, but that he had some casino winnings or had brought an amount of money on board, $15,000. Something like. Do you know anything about money?
Well, we know firsthand, because my brother had this discussion with my father, that George did not bring a large amount of money on the boat. As to his amount of winnings, we're not aware. The FBI has not been able to tell us, and Royal Caribbean has not provided the information. I have heard from people on the boat that there were rumors that George did have a large amount of money. Like I said, I can't confirm or deny this at this point because we just don't know. Okay,
but there certainly would be records from the casino. If they were paying out, converting chips to cash, there would have been records of all of this. So that is a verifiable fact one way or the other. You just haven't received the information from the FBI.
Right. That's right. And from what I understand, the casino is the most largely watched area, given the amount of money that's changing hands, and the fact that Royal Caribbean may be, or other cruise lines may be concerned about robbery by their employees. So that's the sort of thing I would think would be on cameras, and there should be enough witness accounts to confirm or deny that George was winning or losing while he was in the casino that night.
There are a lot of elements that seem to be going back and forth, disputed elements, but most of this should be verifiable. There certainly were not cameras in individual staterooms. We don't know what happened when, for example, George was returned with those 2 or 3 men to his room. But in terms of videos in the casino, videos in the hallway, video cameras, crew members testifying about sightings, are you confident you have a pretty good timeline with moments, facts, events between the time he was in the casino with Jennifer and the time he was left in the cabin, whether he was left in the cabin or literally thrown overboard?
I think we have a fairly good timeline. I think that the FBI has an excellent timeline, and we're just hoping that that timeline, in connection with witness testimony and also the videos from the cameras, will be enough to solve my brother's murder. And we're confident. Actually, Catherine, we had a meeting with high-level Connecticut FBI agents this past week, and they reassured us that they're 100% committed to my brother's case. It's not cold. They're actively investigating, and we just have all our faith in them, and we just hope that they are guided, to bring the culprits to justice. Because if there's one thing that really is hurting my family the most, it's knowing that whoever snatched my brother's life away from him at the age of 26 is still roaming the streets.
Would you consider the 3 men that we've discussed frequently, I believe 2 Russians, possibly a young man from California, do you consider those individuals persons of interest?
Well, I think that, they're obviously interesting to speak to. I don't want to label them persons of interest. I think, we
don't want to call them suspects. We learned after the Olympic Park
Right.
bombing not to do that.
Right.
But is there anyone else, as far as you know, that is considered, someone of particular interest that is
Yes.
being?
Yes.
Yes, there are.
Yes. In fact, I've spoken about this previously, and this is also out in the media before, so this is, I feel comfortable saying it to you without, any problem with FBI confidentiality. But in one of the Turkish police statements that were released to my family from the American Embassy, a crew member from the Royal Caribbean Brilliance of the Seas was actually, a finger was pointed at him, let's say. So I think that this story may be a little more complicated than any of us know.
All right, at this point in time, you use the terms that the FBI is not considering this a cold case. You want them to get the culprits. All of that sounds like you are convinced this was an act of murder and not someone who fell overboard unattended.
We're convinced, yes.
All right. Well, Bree, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate the information.
Thank you, Catherine.
Okay, on the other side, forensics on the high seas. Our panel reacts to Dr. Henry Lee's trip aboard the Caribbean ship today, and will it advance the investigation? Later, Cody Posey took the stand. Now other witnesses are coming to his private investigator.